Welcome to Wanderpaws Down Under. I'm Dan,
I'm Anita.
and together we're travelling around Australia with our dog Wally, our cat Paprika, our off-road caravan, and our trusty Pt2 Hilux.
And we're here to bring you some pet travelling tips on the road. And this time we're literally on the Gibb River Road, and it is part 2 of our 3-part series.
Yay! So we've obviously survived the first 4 or so days of the Gibb, and in this episode we're going to bring you the next leg, which is going to go all the way from Mount Elizabeth Station and all the amazing pet-friendly things we can do there, right through to the Gibb River campsites,
Yeah.
the free camp, and onwards to Home Valley Station. So we're going to be covering various gorges that you can do with your dog or cat, where you can stay, our recommended station stays on this part of the Gibb.
Some cool off-road adventures, 4-wheel drive tracks.
And everywhere else in between.
Absolutely.
So before we proceed any further, remember to hit that subscribe button, share our beautiful content, give us a like, give us a comment. We'd love to hear your feedback. So we'll start with Mount Elizabeth Station. After a pretty rough road in, we were excited to get to a pretty lush cattle station indeed. And after having gone through a couple of gates, which is the customary station experience, mainly you jumping out of the car and me going through, we got to this beautiful large green station.
Yeah. And the best thing about Mount Elizabeth Station is, I don't know if you've watched the new series on Netflix, Territory. This is an actual working cattle station where they do all of the cool things like mustering with helicopters, and it's just got a really authentic Australiana vibe. And
There's actual cows there,
yeah,
which is a
actual
great start.
cows, real cows. And sometimes, you do stay at stations and you don't see that many animals because they might be, in a different part of the station or a different part of the property. But this actual station has multiple places where you can actually visit, paddocks with cows and just, a really cool place. And as you're going to hear as we go through a little bit about Mount Elizabeth, it really is one of the best spots on the Gibb River Road.
I would say it's probably my favourite station stay on the Gibb.
Or even
hands
one
down.
of the favourite station stays of the trip,
Yeah.
I would say.
Definitely. It's got really genuine vibes. Like Anita said, there are actual cows everywhere, and you can hear and see the mustering process taking place, whether it be on ATVs or helicopters. And the staff there, they also get involved in mustering. And it's not a really big crew over there, so it did feel like a much more intimate, special experience compared to some of the larger stations where we stayed later on the Gibb.
Absolutely.
One of the best parts is it was reasonably cost effective. So after doing a lot of off-grid camping for the first part of the Gibb, it was a bit of a relief to get to a place where we could just have freely have a shower, clean the dirt off us, have a bit of shade. There wasn't any powered sites at the time. I think if you are desperate, you can plug in for a price. But the temperatures had also come down a little bit, so it was just a little bit more comfortable all round. But to be honest, the facilities there I actually found were the best that we'd seen on all the Gibb. They were
probably the best out of a lot of places that we've stayed. It seems like they'd recently refurbished and maybe upgraded the shower and toilet blocks, and there's plenty to choose from, because I know that in the peak season Mount Elizabeth Station can get quite busy. When we were there, it was like pick of the litter. There was grass sites under the trees, shaded sites, places for caravans, places for your trailers, tents, everything. So we had a really, really big amount of space to choose from, didn't we?
Yeah, it was fantastic. And particularly if the days do get hot, there are quite a lot of shady sites.
Yeah.
Obviously, you won't get the solar, but if you do need to move to a more, exposed site, then there's plenty of room there. The sites are also very flat, so it was just very easy to manoeuvre there. And like Anita said, we had the pick of the bunch coming quite late in the season.
Yeah.
In terms of what else is on Mount Elizabeth Station, so there's a small shop, so you can stock up on a few bits and pieces.
Had some lollies, a little bit of meat from the station, which is a great little purchase for your barbecue.
Yep. No liquor, so you got a BYO, as with pretty much everywhere on the Gibb.
Yeah, that's true.
And there are these really, really cute nightly dinners that are had on the station, and the menu does change each night. So sometimes you can get ribs, sometimes you can get steaks, all sorts of different combinations, but more on that later. One thing that should be a bit of a note of caution with the station is there is baiting there. So 1080 baiting is in progress. They do have signs around the property, and the staff also outline that when you check in. it's something to be more not alarmed by, but just cautious of. They
Yeah.
also curiously do have working station dogs, so
Yeah.
I don't know how that all works, but anyway, keep your pooch close to your campsite. Obviously the campsite itself is not baited, but there is always a risk of birds moving the baits in and around the place, so we kept Wally on a pretty tight leash, and
Yeah.
Paprika had very limited roaming capabilities on this part of the trip.
Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of the Gibb is stationed, so there are baiting areas along the way, and not all of them are marked. So just keep it in mind. Don't stress yourself too hard, but yeah, just keep that in mind for your trip along the Gibb.
Yep. We recommend staying 2 to 3 nights just because there are quite a few things to do from the station itself, and it is about a half an hour drive to the Gibb on the side roads. So in our opinion, this is one place where you can unwind and relax a little bit and
Yeah.
really soak in and enjoy the various gorges and other attractions in the area. So I guess that was day 5 when we arrived.
Yep.
Day 6, we decided to do a very pet-friendly set of activities straight from the station itself. Wally obviously came with us, but Paprika, after travelling many days on bumpy corrugated roads,
Yeah.
wasn't really in the mood to come out with us, and
Yeah.
we couldn't be bothered with him.
I think
to
he
us.
spent most of his next couple of days under the bed. He really wasn't vibing coming out. So again, as a pet owner, if you've got your cat with you, just pick up on their vibes. You know, cats, they like to sleep all day anyway. So don't force activities for your cat. I think the
Yep.
2 big gorges the day before was enough for us. So yeah. Wally was with us though, and Wally had a great time.
Wally had a great time. So about 17 kilometres from the camping area, still remaining on the station, it's about a 20-minute drive, you can go visit the old Mount Elizabeth Homestead. So this was the original homestead and initial set of structured buildings that were established back in the, I think, early 1900s when the station was established. And it's a really interesting place to just park your car, go for a wander around, really soak in the scenery and
The
have a really
conditions.
good feel, for the conditions of how people lived back in the day. And I'll admit, it was really
Hard,
tough.
Yeah. There is even like some really cool old fridges and old ovens and like, yeah, so if you're into antiques and like vintage things, like, okay, it does look like a little bit of a rubble of mess at first when you kind of rock up, but when you actually go in and explore the region, not the region, but the area where the homestead is, it's really quite cool. Like there's all little things left over from that era. So
Yep.
we found it kind of cool. It's a nice place to take some photos too because it's kind of rustic and
Yep.
very outback vibes. Very hot though, so it makes you wonder how these people sort of survived in those days without
Yeah.
air conditioning or without,
It's crazy. You can,
Nice.
you can
Yeah.
just see how tough that country is,
Yeah, it's
and
hard.
it's very snaky as well. So just
Yes.
be cautious where you walk, especially with your
doggy.
pooch. Yeah, but just a relic of a bygone era, and I guess it gets
Still
your
cool.
imagination going as to what humans can really live through and
Yeah.
survive in. But there is also a cemetery on site, which had fairly recent graves. Our guess
that
is
was
it was probably family of the original
Yeah.
station owners. But yeah, it was a really interesting little side trip. Definitely recommend worth doing if it's not too hot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good fun.
And from there, you can drive about 20 kilometres to a place called Warla Gorge. So Warla Gorge is also located on the Mount Elizabeth Homestead area. Look, the track in is pretty ordinary. I'd rate it more of a four-wheel drive track than a road itself.
Definitely.
It is a little bit rutty. There are a few spots where you do have to slow down.
It's a nasty little one.
Yeah, in terms of the comfort rating, being a four-wheel drive track, I'd probably give it maybe a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't super comfortable, but
It's not steep or anything like
Yeah.
that. It's not super difficult.
yeah, just going
Just,
full
yeah,
drive,
slow.
high range. Don't need low range,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was about half an hour to get in there. But once you do get there, you are greeted with a beautiful little gorge and swimming hole.
Yeah, and we were kind of there at the driest part of the year where water wasn't flowing as much as in the peak seasons. So the water levels were quite low, but I can imagine in the full, peak of the season, it would be very, very beautiful here. And it was beautiful even without as, much water. There was cute little beaches where you could kind of lay down and sunbake if you could handle the heat. But there was also some really lovely gum trees kind of yearning for the water, like hanging over the side of the beach. and a few little rock pools at the very start. I mean, for Wally in particular, he had a great time. And funnily enough, when we got down there was 2 other poochers.
Yeah.
So, and a nice, lovely couple that we met.
Yep, Michaela and Jack.
Yeah, so, you know, it's a really great place for your dog. So if you're thinking about pet friendliness, depending on what time of the year you're there, it was really quiet when we were there, and we were all able to go for a swim.
Yep. Even
Yeah.
fell asleep under the said gum trees.
Yeah, it
and,
was
and
quite relaxing.
Yeah, and look, it seems a little bit crocky on the gorge sides. To be honest, we didn't see any freshies there.
We didn't really go too far down.
Yeah, we didn't go too far, but definitely no salties. So it is safe swimming for you and your
Yeah.
pooch. Well, as safe as you can be on the Gibb.
Yeah.
Definitely worth doing, and it was a great day to just unwind from all the stresses of the previous 5 days
And
of the
to
Gibb.
cool off on the water. Yeah.
Sure. So we took it pretty easy on day 6. After the gorge, we just went and hung out back at the camp and met up with our other 2 friends that we originally met up with.
Jaden and Jess.
Yeah, Jaden and Jess. So we knew them from our time at the first place, Leonard River.
Yeah.
And then we obviously ran into them at Mount Barnett Station. And it was becoming a bit of a theme.
A trend, yeah.
Yeah, throughout our trip around Australia, we'd been yearning to really do a bit of travels and a bit of forward driving with some other people. And it looks like we finally started doing that on the Gibb.
And this might be another reason why Mount Elizabeth ended up being one of our favourite station stays for our entire trip, is because we actually ended up having a really, really nice time with another 2 couples.
Yep.
And we got to share in some cool adventures on the next day.
Yeah, definitely. So on day 7, we decided to go to the other gorge that was on the Mount Elizabeth property called Wunnamurra Gorge. And I'll admit, originally, I actually did not want to go on to this gorge. The reason being, although it's only a 10-kilometre forward drive track to get in, it's apparently quite a hardcore forward drive track. And
Yeah.
although we have a very capable rig,
we were not experienced.
we were not experienced. And, getting into low range, but staying in low range and going through very steep and rutty and
Lots of
rocky
rock
roads.
climbs,
Yeah,
yeah.
lots of climbs and steep descents.
Yeah.
I was a little bit nervous, I'll admit that. But luckily, Jack and Michaela and also
They
Jaden
were
and
very
Jess,
confident.
they expressed some interest in going to this gorge. So, I just had to acquiesce and join them.
So we decided
you.
we'd do a little tag along, and you know what, that just put our minds at ease. And it's a great idea for those of you who are, kind of not ready to sort of tackle a forward drive track all on your own. If you can find people on your stay that are willing to come with you, it kind of just takes that little bit of the edge off, like if you do get stuck, you've got someone to pull you out. If you have any issues, like, you can kind of just be that, confidence for each other. So it definitely made our trip a little bit more enjoyable, but it gets pretty wild.
Yeah, it gets pretty wild. And, being the oldest of the bunch, we, of course, had to go to the front and lead the pack. So we had our car, we had Jaden and Jess in their 76 Series Land Cruiser, and Michaela and Jack were in their Isuzu Ute. So onwards we went, 6 adults, 3 dogs, because Michaela and Jack had a couple of pooches, and we had Wally, and onwards we went. Now, before I mention any further, I should mention, unfortunately, with this gorge and Warla Gorge, you do actually have to pay extra to access them. So it's payable to the station upon check-in. I don't know. To me, it seems a little bit excessive,
yeah,
but
like maybe in peak season to keep the numbers down, but kind of when we were there and the water levels were low, we were a little bit unhappy about that. But at the same time, I mean, supporting a station and supporting, the life out there, it makes sense in one way. So, it was worth it, at least.
It was definitely
really
worth it. So 10 kilometres from the homestead, you take initially relatively smooth forward drive track, and then things get really, really
we're like,
interesting.
this is no problem. This is all right.
So maybe about 2 kilometres in, you are forced to engage low range straight away. And trust me, you'll know when it's time to engage low range, because all of a sudden you start to get these hills. Yeah, you can't see over the bonnet, and the wheels start rising when you're going through this track, and you're like, okay, it's probably time to get a bit more traction on
So this
board.
is where my logistics and solving skills came in. I would jump out of the car and kind of check the line and give a little bit of advice as to the best way to go, and because we were in the lead, it kind of would follow on for the cars behind us.
And the other ladies would jump out and do the same. And I had,
So we know what the girls' role is. All of the women's role was to check the line and kind of like give moral support and no, you're going too far this way. Don't do that.
Yeah.
No, so it was actually quite fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
It was a great little adventure, and to be honest, the heart was pounding, particularly for a noob like me. But I'm here to tell you that we actually got through it with no issues whatsoever. No problems with the tyres, no problems with getting bogged.
Yeah.
In fact, it was actually quite an enjoyable and thrilling experience. So
I think for more experienced four-wheel drivers, they might not feel it was, as challenging. But I think for anyone that, is really tackling their first hard four-wheel drive track, it was really invigorating. It was kind of like exciting and terrifying all at the same time. Yeah,
for sure. Best part is Michaela and Jack did have a drone with them, so we finally got a bit of drone footage. I've put it up, as you can see now. Yeah, really cool. Fantastic, rugged Kimberley country, and obviously it's quite dry when we were there, but I think it does get a little bit more lush when the rains come or shortly after the rains. But definitely it is one not to miss. Even if you are a little bit nervous, there are sections where you can actually leave the car a little bit before the gorge and actually walk an extra kilometre. Yeah, so we did see some less
capable... It's a bit of a long walk in the sun, but you know what, if you want to go, then it's worth it if you don't want to push your car through it.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, I think I'd probably recommend doing this track if you have had an upgraded suspension setup, just because the departure and approach angles are quite steep. Can it be done with a stock four-wheel drive that's high clearance? Probably yes. You might be a little bit more nervous. Yeah. Just watch your front and back bumpers, because things do get a little bit more hectic.
Some of the rocks are pretty big. So.
But that being said, we all survived, and after a short walk from the car park, I think it was about 15 minutes, we got to the top of this amazing gorge.
It was so
Wunnamurra Gorge.
Yeah, and flowing waterfalls for once.
Yeah.
Lots of water, and just so many different little places that you can kind of set up. There is one little catch. So big catch. If you have a little dog, whatever. But if you have a dog the size of Wally, about 37 to 40 kilos, depending on how much he's been eating for the month, it can be a little bit difficult. So there is one section where the distance between the rocks, like the level of the gorge, is above like a human's head height. Yep. So, like a couple of meters maybe. So pretty much the only way to get down there is someone's put some shoddy little ladder there that moves and is not secured.
And a trestle table.
Yeah, I think someone just brought that down like from their own car and thought, we'll just leave this here to help anyone out when they come down here. But it is a pretty hefty climb and descent. So pretty much we had to find a pulley type system. So I think Jaden hopped down the bottom, and I think we got Wally in his harness and kind of had him on his leash, and we're like lowering him down. Lowering him down slowly. The dog's just like a cow going to slaughter or something, which is probably not good for this place that we're staying in, a cattle station. Yeah. So look, that can be a little bit iffy. The border collies and the kelpies, they're a bit lighter, right. Yeah. So you can kind of wrap them around you and carry them down. But for a larger breed dog, it is a little bit of heavy lifting. So look, if you've got a big dog, that's just something to keep in mind. But it kind of adds to all of the, excitement of the trip.
Well, we've been on such an adventure just to get to this gorge. It'd be a shame to just turn around, not swim, just because you've got a large dog. So, look, you've got to get a bit ingenious. But we made it work. Yeah. And there's so many places where you can set up for the day. You can either set up on the rocks, and that way you'll have a bit of shade, or you can go down to the beach. It is a little bit more snaky, so we decided to just hit the rocks. And what a spectacular place. I mean, you've got a flowing waterfall, so you can have a bit of a shower.
I think I went under and had a bit of a nature shower, didn't I? I think you did.
Absolutely. You can jump off the cliffs on many sides, and they're quite tall. I think probably about 8 or 9 meters at the tallest points. Yeah.
Wally took his new job title really seriously when we were there. He decided that he was the surf life-saving and rescue dog. And anytime anyone would jump off the cliff, Wally would start barking and start jumping into the water and swimming towards them to guide them back to the rocks. So I think that happened every single time one of our little group jumped into the water. You'd hear and Wally would jump in and ruff, 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 ruff. And he would swim and lead the pack. I think you've got a video of a flying V at one point where Wally's leading the pack and you and Jaden are swimming back from the gorge. So, look, Wally was actually a bit of a pain in the ass, to be honest.
He was. Yeah, just because you didn't actually need life-saving at that point.
No.
The gorge isn't that big and the water's not that cold.
But it was quite funny to see the three dogs and how differently they behave. Like collies and Kelpie dogs being more working dogs, country dogs. Being so chill and calm, and then Wally, the city dog, just like stimuli, like crazy stuff going on, like hyperactive. But it was such a fun time. We even brought our own lunch and made ourselves a little wog sandwich. I think we brought little containers with different food to slap on our sandwiches.
Yeah.
But also the best part was sharing it with, another two couples who became our friends. And it was really, really great.
It was
fantastic.
fantastic.
Such a nice time. And this was probably one of the nicest gorges, maybe even for that reason, but it actually was just very beautiful. And there was even some Aboriginal rock art.
Yes, such large amounts of rock art scattered all around the gorge, and you can go for a bit of a wander and explore, and you'll just turn corners and you'll go, oh my god, that's so clear and vivid. It was a really, really special place, and you can tell that a lot of effort had been put into to making that a special place. It had very good energy. Didn't see any crocs, although I'm sure freshies would be present maybe somewhere downstream, but really fantastic day out. And being on the Mount Elizabeth property and being down that hectic four-wheel drive track, there was basically no people. So we had the place almost to ourselves.
Again, this, coming in the peak season, I can just imagine how many people would be there. It's just one of those little benefits that sometimes you miss out on seeing the canyons or the gorges in full flight, waterfalls in full flight, but you do get this other element of just absolute, isolation and bliss because you're literally in the Kimberleys on your own half the time, or with a couple of people, and you're just got this absolute beautiful nature's oasis to yourself. So I think for us it was just
probably the most epic day of the Gibb for me, and also because nothing went wrong. There was no issues with recoveries.
And we challenged ourselves.
Absolutely,
we really challenged ourselves and challenged our gear.
And after that, I was like, oh man, we can do anything. Like literally,
except for get the bloody dog back up there.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a really good point, because what goes down must come up again, and it might be a little bit easier to lower down a 40-kilo dog. It was a little bit more tricky getting him up, but
overhead.
We made it work.
We made it work. Did it.
So definitely, it's one that you must do. And when we got back to the station, we actually visited a few baby calves that were just on the property. So we gave them a bit of a feed, a bit of a pat. The dogs are all pooped. They didn't want a bar of it. And I think that night we also decided to treat ourselves and have the station dinner.
Jaden and Jess were doing it, and we were kind of like, we're not really needing to spend money. Like we had sausages or something like that. And then, Dan and I just looked at each other and said, when are we going to get to come back here? When are we going to get to have beef ribs on a station ever again? So
beef ribs, that's...
They were like buffalo or like mammoth. They were so big. And it came with like a full buffet.
Of sides.
Of sides, which were like pasta bakes, potato bakes. No one was going hungry.
Veggies.
And desserts.
All for $40. So it was really, really good value.
Amazing.
I mean,
same as a pub.
You couldn't actually finish it. It was that much food.
I think I had one rib. Like one. And you guys pushed it maybe by having two. They were huge.
Amazing. And the quality of the meat, being from that station, it was obviously very special. Like, okay, yes, I know that they've just butchered the cows we were looking at and admiring.
We were just touching the little calves. Stop it.
But it was so juicy and so tasty.
Okay.
But it is really, really nice communal vibes. You can sit around the campfire after. Just a beautiful way to end the most epic day of the Gibb for us. And then day 8 hit. So we were definitely not looking forward to the next drive, because we'd heard along the grapevine that this was the worst section of the Gibb at that time of year. And surprisingly, it was actually pretty good.
I think our standards had changed by this point. That's the reality. Like our standards were getting lower and lower every day. So our expectations were like the road's going to be so bad. That we were mostly pleasantly surprised at this point.
Definitely. Well, this was the section from Mount Elizabeth Station to the Gibb River Free Campsite. So probably give it about a 5 out of 10. It was average. And look, all of these ratings that we're giving, they're relative to expectations. Please keep in mind the road conditions will change week to week, month to month.
Oh, yeah.
So don't necessarily rely on our review. But you can see from the first episode and now this one that it's a mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah. Anyway, 5 out of 10. It was a 102-kilometre drive from Mount Elizabeth to that Gibb River campsite. 100 clicks on the Gibb seems like a lot. It is, but it actually didn't take that long because the road was reasonable.
Yep.
And we got to the Gibb River campsite and we were greeted with a really wide selection of different camping areas to choose from.
Now, on WikiCamps, this Gibb River campsite is really like highly praised for being absolutely stunning, and maybe at a different time of the year it would be. And I'm not saying it was terrible, but it was
saying
dry.
it's crap.
It was dry. It was hot. It was dusty.
Yeah.
And there was a choice of sort of two sections that you can camp in. And one side was really rutty and really, like, you probably want to, like, very sandy.
Yep.
And completely covered by the trees, so you wouldn't get any solar.
But you can get big rigs in there.
You can definitely get bigger rigs in there.
Help.
And the water had receded on that side so far that there was not really a lot of water frontage. The other side, I guess to the left from where we were coming, was more smaller sites, a little bit flatter, and there was water actually in that part of the Gibb River. So we chose
waterfront property.
Yeah, we chose the smaller site, the little bit more crammed, because we had our friends Jaden and Jess rock up next to us, and there was a couple of backpackers already in the area and another caravan. So look, it was a little bit smaller in terms of room, but a little bit nicer.
Yep.
There was definitely still march flies floating around. It was very pretty though, like the river section. But
no crocs that we saw, but apparently there have been spotted freshies only.
I think this is just this time of the year, being the water levels being quite low. We were very lucky with the amount of crocs we'd seen up until this point.
Yep.
But yeah.
Look, it was pet friendly. It was free. No one was complaining too much.
We
you
had
could
a
have
nice
a fire.
campfire, exactly.
Yep, plenty of wood around. We did try and make damper.
I think we roasted marshmallows.
We tried to make damper. It was semi-successful. I will blame Jaden on this one because he stuffed up the recipe.
You can't blame him.
I'm
pretty
blaming
sure
everyone and everything except me.
Damper.
That's true. That is true. Sorry, Jaden, if you're watching this. My bad.
No, yeah, it was nice. It was nice just to have like a little bit of a rest with our friends. But some people have stayed at this campsite for a long period of time when they're on the Gibb, so I'm sure that after, a little bit earlier in the season, it's a lot more flowing and a little bit nicer than what we experienced.
Yep, definitely. So the next morning we woke up and it was day 9 on the Gibb. And on this day we were travelling from the Gibb River Free Campsite to Ellenbrae Station.
We were really just driving for the scones, to be honest.
Yep.
We heard that there were scones. And, like when you're on
Is it scones?
Scones or scones? Oh gosh, I don't know.
Let us know in the comments what you think. Scones or scones? Anyway.
But how are they going to tell us in the comments? They can't exactly pronounce it. It's
they
still
can try.
The same. So we'd heard that there was like fresh food somewhere on the Gibb, and by fresh food, I mean something that's literally just been cooked, ready for us to eat. Fresh cream.
It's not very fresh if it's being cooked.
And it's like scones,
freshly cooked. Scones.
Okay. Anyway, we weren't even really that keen on going to Ellenbrae at this point. Not for any other reasons, but Jess and Jaden were going there. But we did hear about the scones, so we were just going to do a quick stop over there, I remember. And we were going to have something I think that they also have mango smoothies, so we were kind of a bit excited about that.
Yep.
But anyway.
The road in was, I'd give it a 5 out of 10, so it was reasonably good.
Though.
It had crappy sections, but it wasn't too bad. The fact that the cat wasn't meowing shows that it wasn't that bad, and that's why I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. But when you do get there, it's only, I think, 5 or so k's off the Gibb, so it's a pretty gentle track in there. But once you do get there, you are greeted by this beautiful, lush little station. I think it's also a working station.
Yep, it is a working station.
Yep. It's got
with mango trees.
Mango trees, huge trees, green grass, a bit of a shop, and of course, the famous kitchen with scones.
Yeah. The staff there are really happy and bubbly, I noticed. There was like a bit of a tour group doing a Kimberley tour there, and we overheard some of the conversations about how intense it is actually to be living on a cattle station and what goes on in the wet season when they close down, having, airplanes having to airlift in food that if you leave, you can't come back. Just really crazy things that, yeah, you just don't even understand until you hear about the life on the station.
It's very tough because they talk about how high the water levels get in the wet season, and you basically, sometimes you can't even get around in an ATV, you'll just get bogged. So it becomes very, very hard yakka. There's a lot of humidity, and you have to very much plan how much food and water you'll need in advance. It's
and
a
they
tough
just
life.
stock up, and they have to plan, like, you know, how many litres of water they need, how much bread they're going to need.
Got a magpie party above us.
So, yeah, it's quite interesting and very insightful to be able to, you know, hear about what station life is actually like.
Yep. The scones were amazing, by the way.
Oh,
so I know
good.
that we went on
and
about them
mango
before.
smoothies, and they had iced lattes.
Yep.
So if you are dying for something on the Gibb, you're dry mouth, you need something, this is the place. We were so, you know, I was a little bit unhappy that it wasn't mango season. Like the mangoes were still green on the tree, and I was like, no, because it would have been so nice to have some fresh fruit.
Yep.
By this point, like, the fresh food's kind of dwindling away. So yeah, it was a beautiful place though. They make really nice cups of coffee, tea, so you can really kind of enjoy yourself. And they do have, I think, even little cottages and stuff there. Some different accommodation.
And a bush spa as well, so you can do a little
toilets
bush
were
spa
really
package.
clean.
Yeah, so you can do a little soak package.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not cheap, but if you're into
You can
that
go and
and
soak
you have
in
the
the
coin,
outback and sit in the tub.
Yeah, so I guess we just decided we couldn't be bothered driving anymore, and it was a really nice station, so we decided to stay there for a night.
Yeah.
It wasn't too expensive, very reasonable price, and you do, in doing so, get access to 2 swimming holes on the property itself, which was, again, a very welcome relief because it was still quite hot at that stage.
Ellenbrae is a freshie haven. So we heard about a resident freshie that lives right on the property, like at the actual station, and then the 2 swimming holes in which we were, you know, enjoying had plenty of freshwater crocodiles.
Plenty. So a short walk from the campsite, and the campsite it's pretty dusty. There are some exposed sections
very, very hot.
and some tree-lined sections, but a short walk from the campsite, you will get to a small swimming hole. It's nothing special, but it is shaded. It's got a sandy beach and a bit of a rope swing. Just keep in mind, there are heaps and heaps and heaps of march flies. This is probably on par with March Fly Glen, if not even worse.
So bad.
They're
this
just
swimming
relentless.
Hole, yeah,
they're just relentless.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can see me giving it a go, trying to use the rope swing, maybe I'm getting a bit old or something, but you know, maybe the young people are better at it. I think the water levels were quite low, so when you jump into the water, you can't really let go of the rope swing very confidently.
Yeah.
But the toilet block also is something to note. They had a bath, which is kind of cool. So you can actually have a bath at the station's campsite, which is really cool.
And whether you like it or not, you're going to get only hot water there. So
you're going to get lizards, you're going to get spiders, you're going to get hot water.
And hot water, because either the tanks are just exposed or the tanks are heated to such an extent that there is no cold water at all there. So you're pretty in and out in terms of that shower.
It was actually too hot.
Yeah. But a short 5-minute drive away is the other swimming hole, and this one is a lot larger. It's basically like this. It's a creek or a small river. You can park up, walk down. It's a really nice fishing spot, although you probably won't catch any fish like we did.
Or you'll be swatting the marsh flies again.
Or you'll be swatting the marsh flies. And Jaden and Jess, they brought their fishing rods, and we decided to give it a red hot go. Now, I'll admit, I'm not a fisherman. You're not a fisherwoman.
No.
We're not experienced. And apparently I have a really, really good cast of the rod. But it was so good that twice I cast it in so far and so hard that we actually lost the lure. Now, again, I'm going to blame Jaden's fishing line on this one. The fishing line was too weak to handle my cast.
Oh.
Nah, in fairness, I think I was going a little bit too hard. But on the second occasion, that was the sole lure that we had remaining, and we actually saw that it landed on the bank of the other side of the river.
It actually hit the rocks.
And we were kind of umming and ahhing as to whether we should swim across the river and try and retrieve it. And at that point, you could actually see freshies on the other bank. They weren't big, but they were there. And as we were umming and ahhing, Jaden decided, he just took his shirt off and started swimming. before anyone said anything. And
then Dan felt guilty because he
felt
was
guilty.
the reason for, the swim. So he's like, I better go in with him.
yeah, so I made a valiant attempt at following him. I got about halfway.
When you noticed?
When I noticed that there were crocodiles, more crocodiles than I thought. But at that stage, Jaden had already found the lure and was on his way back. So
It was probably the wrong time to tell him that we saw all the freshies next to him.
Yeah.
And obviously he became quite aware of them being in the water after that. And he's like, how the hell am I going to get back? This would be one of our, least favourite moments of swimming. I was from the sidelines, I'm not going to lie. So, but it was poor little Jaden bloody going across the whole entire little river section.
and Wally trying to rescue him again while his rescue mode was enabled. And yeah, anyway, he got the lure back. He looked like a hero. I looked like a bit of a doofus. So it's all good. Everyone was put in their place.
Yeah, thankfully there were freshies and nothing else,
Yeah.
but it was still pretty creepy.
Yeah, nonetheless, definitely worth visiting. It's a great day to spend with your
Except
pooch.
for the march
Except for the
flies.
march flies, yeah. But you know what? When it's super hot and dusty, it's a place where you do want to end up that day.
Yeah.
So onwards to day 10. Day 10 is where we took the Gibb River Road from Ellenbrae Station to Home Valley. It was 112 kilometres. We were expecting, as per the previous two sections, we were expecting a fairly nice stretch of the Gibb. We were all excited. Everyone got up with a spring in their step, and that quickly deteriorated into literally the worst part of the Gibb in terms of road conditions that we had experienced to date.
Yeah, it was
1
nasty.
to 2 out of 10. This was nasty.
We were lucky in one sense because it wasn't high river clearance or anything like that. So I think at the wet season this might even be underwater.
At the Drysdale River crossing, yeah.
Yeah. But thank goodness we were going through dry so we could kind of see what we were up against. But what we were up against was nasty.
It was a bad one. We're talking very sharp, rocky sections, massive corrugations, bull dust. It was just unrelenting.
Yeah.
I considered lowering the tyre pressures even further, but given how many rocks and sharp rocks were on this stretch of the Gibb, sort of decided to stick with the 32 to 35 psi and 40 on the caravan that we talked about in the last episode. But yeah, it's definitely not an
If we
enjoyable
were going to
part
lose the
of the
tyre,
Gibb.
it was there.
Yeah, to be honest, we had our reverse camera in our car had popped out of its socket, so there was that. The fridge had popped out of its socket in our caravan.
Yeah.
There was a few bits and pieces, a couple of downlights had popped out.
We're pretty at our ends of our tether,
yeah,
thinking what else is going to break now?
We were pretty over it, and there was actually a bit of damage to the top of our caravan that we hadn't yet noticed that would come up when a storm would hit in the next episode. But
Yeah.
more on that in the next one. But yeah, we were really starting to feel quite over it at this stage. The stress
Absolutely.
levels were getting higher. The cat was really unhappy. The dog was bothered.
It
We
was
had
hot.
marshfly bites all over us, and yeah, the mood
Things
was
were
getting
breaking.
a little bit darker.
That's true.
Nonetheless, we survived it, and we got to probably the closest that we could get to paradise at Home Valley Station.
That's for another time.
That's for another time. So we'll leave you hanging on that one. Home Valley and El Castro Station and on to Kununurra will be the next episode. So hopefully you've enjoyed this one and we haven't freaked you out too much. We're walking examples of how you can have an epic time and a shitty time at the same time and still be here.
And just how pet friendly the
Yep.
Gibb River Road actually can be.
Yeah, it
As long
actually
as you're
delivered.
cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if the cat would agree with that sentiment
yeah, he
too
hated
much,
it.
but definitely the dog loved it for the most part.
Mostly, yeah.
So stay tuned for our next episode. Let us know what you thought in the comments about this one. We'd love to hear your feedback and anything else you'd like us to talk about our experience on the Gibb. Feel free to write us a comment and we'll be happy to reply.
Bye for now.
Till next time, bye.